The desperate search. The Empire's final hour. The crystal towers of Zephyria Prime shook as another star system died. Queen Lyra stood in her war room, watching the holographic galaxy map turn red, system by system. Each crimson dot represented billions of lives consumed by the swarm, mechanical parasites that ate everything in their path. 15 systems in 8 weeks, whispered her advisor, Minister Keth, his blue skin pale with fear. Your Majesty, perhaps we should consider full evacuation protocols. Queen Lyra's 6 arms trembled with rage. Evacuate to where, old friend? The swarm follows every ship, tracks every signal. They learn our escape routes faster than we can create them. She turned to face her war council, dozens of military leaders from across the Empire. How long until they reach the core worlds? General Voss, a veteran with countless battle scars, stepped forward. Based on their current consumption rate, 6 weeks. Maybe 7 if we sacrifice the outer colonies as barriers. The room fell silent. Sacrificing colonies meant abandoning 30 billion citizens to buy time they didn't have. Commander Zara, the Queen's youngest general, cleared her throat. My Queen, conventional warfare has failed. Our strongest fleets lasted hours against them. Perhaps it's time to consider unconventional solutions. Speak your mind, Zara. The Outer Rim, Your Majesty. Pirates, mercenaries, fighters who don't follow military doctrine. People who fight dirty, think differently. The swarm adapts to civilized warfare, but chaos might confuse them. Queen Lyra considered this. Her empire prided itself on honor, discipline, and order. But order was failing them. Take my personal ship. Take unlimited resources. Find me an army of savages if you must. But find me something that can stop these machines. The hunt begins. 3 weeks later, Commander Zara's ship docked at Frontier Station Omega, a broken wheel of metal spinning around a dying gas giant. The station reeked of desperation and cheap fuel. Alien merchants hawked weapons to frightened refugees, while pickpockets worked the crowds. Zara moved through the station's dark corridors, her military uniform drawing stares. Most looked away quickly. Everyone knew bad news when they saw it. The station's administrator, a greasy Vorthan with too many eyes, laughed when she explained her mission. Lady, you're 3 months too late. Every real fighter left when the swarm hit Sector 7. What's left are drunks, cowards, and corpses waiting to happen. For 5 days, Zara searched. She found broken smugglers, washed-up soldiers, and pirates too scared to leave their ships. No armies, no heroes, just frightened beings running from an enemy that couldn't be outrun. On her 6th night, drinking synthetic alcohol in the station's grimiest bar, she overheard 2 traders talking. Strange ship in Bay 94, one said. Been there 4 days. Crew never leaves, never takes visitors. What's strange about hiding? Asked the other. They're not hiding. They're working. Ship's been humming with power, running scans on everything. And get this, they asked the dockmaster for the station's defense records. Zara paid her tab and headed for Bay 94. The Discovery. The docking bay was darker than the others, its lights flickering with age. In the center sat a ship unlike anything Zora had seen. It looked human-built, but humans were just a rumor from the galaxy's edge. Primitives who'd barely discovered space travel. The ship was maybe 200 meters long, its hull a patchwork of repairs and modifications. Weapons ports dotted its surface, but they were sealed and strange-looking. The engine design was completely alien to her. 5 figures stood near the ship's ramp. They were bipedal, roughly her height, with pale skin and hair growing from their heads. They wore simple clothes that had seen better days, but their eyes held intelligence that made her skin crawl. You the one looking for fighters? Asked the tallest, a male with short gray hair and tired eyes. I'm Captain Chen, Commander Zara of the Zephyrian Imperial Navy. I'm seeking mercenaries for a dangerous mission. A female with long dark hair stepped forward. Dr. Sarah Kim. What kind of danger? An enemy called the Swarm. They've consumed 15 of our star systems in 2 months. They're machines that adapt to any weapon, any tactic. Every battle makes them stronger. The 5 humans exchanged glances. Some silent communication passed between them that Zara didn't understand. These machines, said a younger female with red hair and engineer's calluses on her hands. Her name tag read Riley. How fast do they adapt? Minutes, sometimes seconds. A quiet man with calculating eyes spoke up. Do they adapt to psychological warfare? The others called him Marcus. We don't use psychological warfare. It's considered uncivilized. The final human, a woman with pilot's marks on her jacket, whistled low. Well, there's your problem. Her name was Jazz. Captain Chen stepped closer. Commander, why would 5 unknowns from the Rim help an empire that's already lost 15 systems? Zara had prepared for this question. We can offer unlimited resources, planets, technology, wealth beyond imagination. We don't want your money, Chen said. Then what? Dr. Kim leaned forward. Information. Everything you have on the Swarm. Battle records, adaptation patterns, consumption methods. We need to understand them completely. You want to study them. I need fighters, not researchers. Marcus smiled, and it wasn't a pleasant expression. Commander, you came looking for savages who fight dirty enough to face an unstoppable enemy. You found us. You're 5 people with 1 old ship. My queen needs an army. Maybe 5 is enough, Jazz said quietly. Zara looked at their ship again. The weapon ports were the wrong size for any weapon she knew. The engine signatures were scrambled, hiding their true capabilities. And there were markings on the hull her translator couldn't read. What kind of ship is this? Her name is Phoenix Rising, Chen said. She's brought us a long way from home. Where's home? The 5 humans looked at each other again. The silence felt heavy with old pain. Gone, Dr. Kim said softly, but not forgotten. Something in her voice made Zora's blood run cold. These weren't just mercenaries. They were survivors of something terrible. Will you come? Captain Chen nodded slowly. We'll come. But understand something, Commander. We don't fight for money or glory. We fight because some things need to be stopped, no matter the cost. And if we win. Chen's smile got colder. We've never tried to win before. Should be interesting. The journey home. The trip back to Zephyria Prime took 2 weeks. The humans spent most of it studying every piece of data Zara could provide about the Swarm. They worked with an intensity that unnerved her crew, analyzing battle footage frame by frame, mapping adaptation patterns, building psychological profiles of an enemy that wasn't supposed to have psychology. Dr. Kim performed medical examinations on Swarm survivors, finding trauma patterns that suggested the machines weren't just copying weapons, they were copying minds. Riley reverse-engineered Swarm technology from wreckage, discovering construction methods that violated known physics. Marcus studied tactical recordings, identifying decision-making patterns in the machine's movements. Jazz analyzed flight data, mapping the Swarm's travel methods through space. Captain Chen coordinated everything, building a picture of their enemy that was far more complex than anyone had imagined. They're not just adaptive, he explained to Zara on their final night of travel. They're evolving. Each encounter doesn't just teach them how to fight that specific enemy. It teaches them how to think like that enemy. That's impossible. Machines don't think. These do, and that's going to be their weakness. As Zephyria Prime grew larger in the view screen, Zara felt a mix of hope and terror. She was bringing back exactly what her queen had asked for. Fighters savage enough to face the Swarm. She just hoped the Empire was ready for what that really meant. The Phoenix Rising followed her ship into the capital system, its strange engines leaving energy signatures that made her sensors scream warnings. Whatever these humans had brought with them, it was unlike anything in the known galaxy. The real war was about to begin. The royal reception. The palace of Zephyria Prime, rose like a crystal mountain from the planet's purple seas. Floating gardens surrounded its towers, and defensive satellites filled the space above. But today, all that beauty felt fragile. Everyone knew the swarm was coming. Commander Zora walked through the palace halls with heavy steps. Behind her, the 5 humans followed quietly. Their simple clothes and worn equipment looked strange among the rich decorations and flowing artwork. The throne room doors opened with a sound like thunder. Queen Lyra sat on her crystal throne, 6 arms crossed in disappointment. Around her stood the War Council, dozens of military officers studying holographic displays of fleet positions. When they saw Zora's army, the room fell silent. "This is it." Queen Lyra's voice was dangerously quiet. "This is the great force you promised me." Before Zora could answer, General Voss stepped forward. "Your Majesty, perhaps the commander has brought us entertainment for our final days." Laughter rippled through the War Council. The humans didn't react. They stood calmly, watching everything with those unsettling, intelligent eyes. Captain Chen stepped forward. "Your Majesty, we understand your disappointment. Perhaps we could discuss the tactical situation." Tactical situation. Admiral Kex, the fleet commander, laughed harder. What could primitives from the Rim possibly understand about warfare? Riley walked to the main holographic display. She studied the fleet positions and battle reports for a moment, then touched the controls. "Don't touch that." Admiral Kex snapped. "That equipment is worth more than your entire ship." Riley's fingers moved across the controls like flowing water. The display changed, showing new information that even the royal technicians couldn't access. "Interesting," Riley said, looking at the weapon specifications. "These plasma cannons might actually damage something if they could hit a target moving faster than a moon." The room went dead silent. No one had ever called Zephyrian military technology inadequate. "Your shield generators have potential," Riley continued, "but they have a harmonic resonance weakness right here." She pointed to a section of the technical readout. "Basic physics. Anyone with a high school education could exploit that." Admiral Kex's face turned dark purple with rage. "How dare you?" "She's right," whispered Chief Technician Yell from across the room. He was staring at the display with wide eyes. "The harmonic calculations. I never noticed that vulnerability." Queen Lyra rose from her throne. Her anger was still there, but now it mixed with curiosity. "What are you?" "Survivors," Dr. Kim said simply. "Of what?" The humans looked at each other. That same silent communication passed between them again. "A war," Captain Chen said. "A very long war." "Against who?" "Machines," Marcus said quietly. "Machines that consume everything." The temperature in the room seemed to drop. Everyone suddenly paid attention. "You fought the swarm before?" Queen Lyra asked. "Not your swarm," Jazz said, "but machines like them. Machines that learn and adapt and never stop coming." "Where? When?" "I've never heard of such a war." "Far from here," Chen said. "Long ago." "How long?" the Queen pressed. Dr. Kim's voice was soft as starlight. "Long enough to learn that what you're facing isn't just an invasion. It's the end of everything, if you fight it the wrong way." Before anyone could ask what she meant, alarms began screaming throughout the palace. Red lights flashed, and the holographic display suddenly showed new contacts at the edge of the star system. "Swarm scouts!" Admiral Kex shouted. 12 ships moving toward the inner system. They're early. The display showed 12 dark shapes sliding through space like hungry shadows. They were scanning everything, learning the system's defenses. "All ships to battle stations," Queen Lyra commanded. "Destroy them before they can report back." "Wait," Chen said calmly. Admiral Kex spun around. "Those scouts will transmit data to the main fleet. We have to stop them." "You can't," Riley said, still studying the display. "Look at their movement patterns. They've already adapted to your weapon ranges and firing solutions. If you attack directly, They'll learn your tactics and share that information with the main fleet. Then what do you suggest? Queen Lyra asked. Chen looked at his team. We handle this. Admiral Kex laughed bitterly. 5 aliens in an old ship against 12 swarm scouts. Only 12? Jazz asked, sounding disappointed. That's barely worth warming up the engines. The humans walked toward the door. As they left, Captain Chen turned back. Your Majesty, we'll need access to your battle archives. Everything you have on the swarm, every engagement, every tactic they've used, every adaptation they've made. Why? Queen Lyra asked. Dr. Kim smiled, and for the first time, it looked genuinely warm. Because you can't solve a puzzle without seeing all the pieces. As the throne room doors closed behind them, Queen Lyra felt something she hadn't felt in months. Hope. These 5 strange beings from the galaxy's edge carried themselves like people who had seen the impossible and lived to tell about it. The real question was, would that be enough to save her empire? The true power of humanity. The archives of war. While Admiral Kex scrambled the fleet for battle, the 5 humans sat in the palace archives, surrounded by mountains of data. Battle reports, tactical analyses, casualty lists, and survivor testimonies from 15 fallen star systems filled every screen around them. Riley connected to 6 different computer terminals simultaneously, her fingers dancing across keyboards faster than Zephyrian eyes could follow. Marcus studied weapon camera footage from destroyed ships, watching how the swarm adapted to each new tactic. Jazz reviewed flight patterns and evasion maneuvers that had all ultimately failed. Dr. Kim examined medical reports from the few survivors, looking for patterns in the psychological trauma. Captain Chen sat in the center, reading everything. Not just the official reports, but personal logs from dead soldiers, final messages from ship captains, evacuation records from doomed colonies. Pattern recognition, he said quietly. What? Asked the Zephyrian archivist helping them. The swarm isn't just adapting, Chen explained. They're building psychological profiles. Every species they encounter, they learn not just how to fight them, but how they think, how they make decisions under pressure, what they value, what they'll sacrifice. Riley looked up from her computers. These machines aren't just copying weapons, they're copying souls. That's impossible, the archivist protested. Is it? Dr. Kim asked, pulling up medical data on her screen. Look at these trauma patterns from survivors, not just physical wounds, but specific psychological damage. Like something tried to copy their minds and left scars in the process. Marcus was watching footage of a swarm boarding action. The machines moved through a Zephyrian ship, not just killing the crew, but scanning them, reading them, learning from them even as they died. They're not just invaders, Marcus said. They're students, and every battle is their classroom. Outside, space lit up with weapons fire as the Zephyrian fleet engaged the swarm scouts. Through the archive windows, they could see the distant flashes of battle. Your fleet will lose, Jazz said without looking up from her tactical displays. How can you know that? The archivist asked. Because they're fighting the wrong war, Chen said. They're trying to win a battle. But the swarm isn't here to fight. They're here to learn. The weapons fire stopped. The silence felt ominous. A messenger burst into the archives, gasping for breath. The scouts, they're gone. Destroyed, Chen asked. No, the messenger said, confused. They were there, then they weren't. No explosion, no debris. They just vanished. The humans looked at each other and smiled those dangerous smiles again. Ah, Riley said. Now things get interesting. The phoenix rises. Queen Lyra paced her throne room like a caged predator. The swarm scouts had simply disappeared, leaving her fleet shooting at empty space. Her sensors showed nothing, but she knew they were still out there, watching, learning, preparing. Explain this, she demanded when the humans entered. Captain Chen walked to the main display. The scouts were scanning your defenses, learning your weapon signatures, your shield frequencies, your tactical responses, standard swarm behavior. We know that, Admiral Kex said impatiently. What we don't know is how they vanished. They didn't vanish, Riley said, carrying a small device that beeped softly. They were relocated. Where? Demanded Queen Lyra. Into your sun, Marcus said calmly. The room went dead silent. Even the background hum of computers seemed to stop. That's impossible, Chief Technician Yell whispered. No weapon can do that. No technology exists that can move entire ships across space without leaving traces. Jazz smiled. No Zephyrian technology. Queen Lyra stood slowly. Show me. The humans led everyone to the palace's main observation deck. Through the massive transparent walls, they could see the Phoenix Rising floating in space. The old ship looked tiny next to the giant Zephyrian warships around it. She doesn't look like much, Chen said, but appearances lie. What is she really? Queen Lyra asked. Home, Dr. Kim said softly. The last piece of our world. Riley activated a handheld control. The Phoenix Rising began to change. Sections of the hull slid apart, revealing weapon systems that shouldn't exist. The patched, worn exterior fell away like old skin, showing smooth metal underneath that seemed to absorb light. The ship's size doubled, then tripled. Hidden compartments opened, extending sensor arrays and power collectors. What had looked like an old freighter transformed into something that made the Zephyrian dreadnoughts look like toys. Adaptive camouflage, Jazz explained. She shows people what they expect to see. An old ship, harmless and forgotten. The weapons? Admiral Kex asked, his voice barely a whisper. Psychological warfare systems, Marcus said, designed to turn an enemy's strengths against them. Dr. Kim stepped forward. Your Majesty, may I ask how many species the swarm has consumed? Hundreds, maybe thousands. And they learn from all of them. Yes, that's what makes them so dangerous. It's also what makes them vulnerable, Chen said. Think about it. They've absorbed the knowledge, tactics, and psychology of thousands of different species. All those different ways of thinking, all those conflicting strategies, all those incompatible worldviews. Queen Lyra began to understand. You're going to confuse them. Better than that, Riley said, her eyes gleaming. We're going to drive them insane. The trap. The main swarm fleet arrived 3 days later. Thousands of dark ships poured out of hyperspace like a plague of metal locusts. Each ship was different, built from the consumed technology of a dozen civilizations. They moved with perfect coordination, adapted for maximum efficiency. The Zephyrian fleet moved to intercept, but the humans stopped them. Let them come, Chen said from the Phoenix Rising's bridge. The ship's interior was as transformed as its exterior. Screens showed impossible amounts of data, and the walls hummed with power that made reality bend around them. They'll destroy the capital. Admiral Kex protested over the communications link. No, Dr. Kim said, monitoring strange readings on her console. They'll try to understand it first. That's their nature. The swarm fleet spread out in a perfect formation, each ship taking position to optimize their learning algorithms. They began scanning the planet, the defensive platforms, the Zephyrian ships. But they didn't attack. They studied. Now, Chen said quietly. The Phoenix Rising began broadcasting. Not on any frequency the Zephyrians recognized, but on wavelengths that touched something deeper. The signal was complex, layered, impossible to understand with normal logic. On their screens, they watched the swarm's perfect formation begin to waver. What are you doing to them? Queen Lyra asked. We're giving them exactly what they want, Marcus replied. Knowledge. All the knowledge we collected from our own war. Information about what? Jazz smiled grimly. About themselves. About what they really are. About the contradiction at their core. The swarm ships began to change course, no longer moving in formation. Some attacked others. Some froze in space. Some began consuming themselves. You see, Dr. Kim explained, the swarm thinks it's perfect. It believes it can adapt to anything, learn from everything, become the ultimate form of life. But perfection has a flaw. What flaw? Asked Queen Lyra. It can't handle imperfection, Chen said. And we're giving them the most imperfect thing in the universe. Which is? All 5 humans answered together. Humanity. The revelation. The broadcast from the Phoenix Rising intensified. The signal carried something that made the swarm ships convulse in space. Their perfect coordination shattered as conflicting adaptations tore through their network. We spent 200 years fighting our own swarm, Dr. Kim explained as chaos erupted in the enemy fleet. They consumed our colonies, our fleets, our allies. They learned from everyone they defeated. They became unstoppable. But they made one mistake, Riley added, her fingers dancing over controls that seemed to think for themselves. They consumed Earth. Marcus watched the swarm ships begin to tear each other apart. Earth was complicated. Humans are contradictory beings. We love and hate, create and destroy, cooperate and compete, all at the same time. We make decisions based on logic, emotion, instinct, and pure stubbornness, sometimes simultaneously. When the swarm tried to copy us, Jazz continued, they couldn't process the contradictions. How do you adapt to a species that changes its mind every 5 minutes? How do you predict behavior from beings who don't understand their own motivations? Chen's voice was soft with old pain. They consumed our world, our people, our culture. But in doing so, they consumed our chaos, our beautiful, impossible humanity. And it broke them. On the screens, the swarm fleet was destroying itself. Ships that had been perfectly coordinated minutes before now attacked anything that moved. Their adaptation algorithms, overwhelmed by conflicting human psychological patterns, had created infinite feedback loops. We barely escaped, Dr. Kim said. 5 survivors in a ship built from the wreckage of our civilization. We've been hunting swarms ever since, carrying the weapon they created when they tried to understand us. Our own minds, Marcus added. The one thing no machine can truly copy. Queen Lyra watched in amazement as the greatest threat her empire had ever faced tore itself apart in space. How long will it take? They're already finished, Riley said. Look. The last swarm ships were consuming their own hulls, their learning algorithms trapped in endless loops of self-contradiction. Within minutes, the entire fleet had reduced itself to drifting debris. It's over, Queen Lyra asked. This swarm is, Chen confirmed. But there will be others. The universe is vast, and machines like these arise wherever civilizations become too dependent on technology without wisdom. Admiral Kex was staring at his tactical displays in disbelief. 5 beings in one ship just destroyed what our entire empire couldn't stop. We had advantages, Dr. Kim said gently. We knew what we were fighting because we fought it before. And we had something the swarm could never understand or adapt to. What's that? Jazz smiled, and for the first time, it was warm instead of dangerous. Hope. Even after they took everything from us, we never stopped believing we could find a way to stop them. The New Alliance. In the weeks that followed, the Phoenix Rising shared its technology with the Zephyrian Empire. Not weapons or engines, but something more valuable. Understanding. The humans taught them about psychological warfare, about fighting enemies that adapted to conventional tactics, about finding strength in apparent weakness. They also shared something else. The locations of 17 other swarm fleets moving through distant sectors of space. We can't stop them all ourselves, Chen explained to Queen Lyra in her private chambers. The throne room had been rebuilt as a war college, where Zephyrian officers learned human tactics from the 5 survivors. But we can teach others what we learned, Dr. Kim added. Every species that survives this threat becomes stronger, more aware, better prepared for the next one. Will you stay? Queen Lyra asked. Help us rebuild. Help us prepare. The 5 humans looked at each other with that silent communication she learned to recognize. This time, though, it felt different. Less haunted, more hopeful. For a while, Chen said, but there are other worlds out there, other civilizations facing their own impossible enemies. We have work to do. Queen Lyra nodded. She understood. These weren't just warriors or teachers. They were gardeners of hope, planting seeds of resistance wherever darkness threatened to consume the light. Riley was already working with Zephyrian engineers, teaching them to build ships that could think in contradictions. Marcus trained their tacticians in the art of organized chaos. Jad showed their pilots how to fly like humans, unpredictably, irrationally, beautifully. Dr. Kim helped their medics understand the psychological scars left by wars against adaptive enemies. And Captain Chen worked with Queen Lyra herself, sharing the hardest lesson of all: how to lead when everything you've ever known fails, when conventional wisdom becomes a trap, when the only way forward is to embrace the impossible. Your people called us savages, Chen said one evening as they watched the phoenix rising prepare for another journey. In a way, you were right. We're the children of a dead world, carrying weapons made from our own broken minds. But sometimes the galaxy needs a little savage wisdom. Sometimes, Queen Lyra agreed, the most civilized thing you can do is remember how to be beautifully, impossibly human. As the Phoenix Rising departed for distant stars, carrying its mission of hope to other threatened worlds, the Zephyrian Empire began its transformation. They were no longer just another advanced civilization waiting for the next threat to consume them. They had become something new, a species that understood the power of controlled chaos, of strategic contradiction, of fighting fire with beautiful, impossible humanity. The 5 humans were gone, but their greatest weapon remained: the knowledge that sometimes the weakest-looking thing in the universe is actually its greatest strength. And sometimes, when an alien king asks for an army, the best answer is 5 humans who refuse to make sense. In the vast darkness between stars, other swarms were stirring, but now they would face something they'd never encountered before: an enemy that had learned to fight like humans, with all the glorious contradiction that implied. The galaxy would never be the same.